You're not lonely because love doesn't exist. You're lonely because you're searching for it in the wrong place. I know why you're tired. You've tried. You opened your heart. You trusted someone. And somewhere along the way, love started to feel like a promise that keeps breaking itself. You look around and ask, why does everyone else find love, but not me? Listen to me closely. This is not a punishment. This is an invitation, because love doesn't arrive when you chase it. Love arrives when you become ready to hold it. Let me walk you through the truth step by step. Most people don't realize this, but the first reason love keeps slipping through their fingers has nothing to do with fate, timing, or bad luck. It begins with an emptiness they've been carrying quietly for years. An emptiness they hoped another human being would finally silence. So they search, not for love, but for relief. Relief from loneliness. Relief from the uncomfortable moments when the room is quiet and their own thoughts get loud. Relief from the feeling that something inside them is unfinished. And when you approach love from that place, it becomes heavy before it even begins. You see, when you are empty, you don't meet someone. You lean on them. You expect them to fill the space you never learned how to sit with. At first, it feels beautiful. Someone texting you back, someone choosing you, someone making you feel seen. But slowly, without realizing it, love turns into pressure. Because no human being was designed to carry another person's sense of worth, purpose, and identity on their shoulders. That's when disappointment begins. Because when the other person has a bad day, you feel abandoned. When they need space, you feel rejected. When they change, you feel threatened. Not because they did something wrong, but because you asked them to hold something that was never theirs to carry. Love cannot survive that weight. Real love does not arrive to repair you. It arrives to share life with you. And there is a difference, a deep one. When you seek love to heal your wounds, you turn the relationship into a transaction. You give affection in exchange for security. You give attention in exchange for validation. And when the return feels smaller than expected, resentment quietly takes root. That's why so many relationships begin with intensity and end with exhaustion. The truth is uncomfortable, but it is freeing. If you don't feel complete when you are alone, you will eventually feel incomplete with someone else, because the emptiness follows you. It doesn't disappear, it simply changes form. One day it looks like jealousy, another day it looks like control, another day it looks like fear of being left. And none of that is love. Love is not two broken people leaning against each other, hoping neither one falls. Love is two whole beings standing side by side, choosing to walk together. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means responsibility. Responsibility for your emotions, responsibility for your happiness, responsibility for the healing you've been postponing. When you take responsibility for your inner life, something powerful happens. You stop begging love to save you. You stop asking another person to complete sentences your soul hasn't finished writing. You come to love not hungry, but grounded, not desperate, but open. And from that place, love feels different. You listen instead of cling. You give instead of demand. You appreciate instead of fear losing. Loneliness, when faced honestly, becomes a teacher. It shows you where you abandoned yourself. It shows you what parts of you are still waiting for attention. And once you give yourself that attention, once you learn how to sit with yourself without distraction, without judgment, without running, something shifts. You realize you were never unlovable. You were just unfinished with yourself, and love, real love, only enters when there is space, not need. When there is presence, not hunger. When there is peace, not urgency. So before you ask why love hasn't found you, ask yourself this. Can you sit alone without feeling broken? Can you enjoy your own company without needing proof that you matter? Can you wake up and feel at home in your own heart? Because the moment you stop asking love to fill a hole, the moment you become whole, love no longer feels like something you chase. It becomes something that meets you naturally, gently, honestly. Another reason love keeps slipping away is because what most people call love is actually fear wearing a beautiful disguise. It feels intense, it feels urgent, it feels intoxicating. But underneath it, quietly driving every reaction, is the fear of being left. This is where attachment enters. Attachment says, stay no matter what. Love says, be yourself, even if that means you grow. Attachment is born from insecurity. Love is born from trust. When you're attached, you don't see the other person clearly. You see them as a lifeline, as protection against loneliness, as proof that you are chosen. And because of that, every small change feels dangerous. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A request for space feels like abandonment. A difference of opinion feels like a threat. So you hold tighter. You call it love, but it's not. It's fear trying to survive. Love doesn't grip. Love allows. Love understands that a person is not an object to be owned, managed, or monitored. A human being is a living, breathing mystery. They evolve, they change. They have moods, seasons, doubts, and dreams that don't always include you at the center. Attachment can't handle that. Attachment says, I need you to stay the same so I can feel safe. Love says, grow even if it challenges me. That's the difference. When you are attached, you negotiate freedom. You trade honesty for reassurance. You stay silent about your truth because you're afraid it might push them away. And slowly, without realizing it, the relationship becomes a cage. Beautiful on the outside, suffocating on the inside. The tragedy is this: attachment doesn't protect love, it destroys it. Because the more you cling, the less the other person can breathe, and the less they can breathe, the more they unconsciously pull away. Not because they don't care, but because the soul needs space to stay alive. Love thrives in freedom, always has, always will. Think about it. The moments when love feels deepest are not when you are controlling each other. They are the moments when you feel safe enough to be fully yourself, to laugh freely, to speak honestly, to sit in silence without fear. That safety doesn't come from possession, it comes from trust. Attachment says, if you leave, I won't survive. Love says, if you leave, it will hurt, but I will still be whole. That sentence alone changes everything. Because when you know you will survive, you stop manipulating. You stop chasing, you stop shrinking yourself to be chosen. You start relating from strength instead of fear. And paradoxically, that's when people want to stay. Not because they are trapped, but because they are inspired. Love is not a contract signed in fear. It is a daily choice made in freedom. And choice only has meaning when leaving is possible. This is hard to accept, especially if you've been hurt before. When you've experienced abandonment, attachment feels like protection. But it's not protection, it's a wound asking to be acknowledged. And no relationship can heal a wound you refuse to look at. The moment you stop confusing attachment with love, something profound happens. You allow the other person to be human. You stop expecting them to regulate your emotions. You stop making their presence responsible for your peace. And in doing so, you give them the greatest gift love can offer: freedom. And here's the truth most people miss: freedom doesn't push love away. It invites it deeper. Because when someone stays even though they are free to leave, that's love. When someone chooses you without being afraid of losing you, that's love. When you can hold someone with open hands instead of clenched fists, that's love. So if love keeps leaving your life, look closely. Are you loving or are you holding on out of fear? Because the moment fear steps back, love finally has room to breathe. Another truth that quietly blocks love is this: most people are focused on being loved, not on being loving. Their energy is turned inward, constantly asking, am I enough? Do they see me? Will they choose me tomorrow? And while those questions feel natural, they slowly poison the very thing they are hoping to receive. Because love is not self-centered, it is self-aware. When you are obsessed with being loved, every interaction becomes a test. You measure words, you analyze tone, you replay conversations in your mind, searching for proof that you matter. And without realizing it, you stop being present. You're physically there, but emotionally you're monitoring. Performing, managing impressions. Love cannot grow in a performance. Real love begins when you stop asking how you're being perceived and start asking how deeply you are present. Presence is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. People don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with sincerity, with someone who listens without waiting to speak, with someone who sees them without trying to fix them, with someone who offers warmth without calculation. When you're focused on being loved, your giving becomes conditional. You are kind, so they'll stay. You are patient, so they won't leave. You are generous, so you'll be valued. But that is not love, it's strategy. And the heart always knows when it's being negotiated with love. Real love gives because it overflows, not because it's afraid. The moment you shift from how do I get love to how do I express love, everything changes. Your energy softens, your nervous system relaxes. You stop chasing validation and start offering connection. And connection, true connection, is what people are starving for. You don't need to be impressive to be loving. You need to be available. Available emotionally, available mentally, available enough to show up without armor. That takes courage. More courage than chasing attention ever will. Being loving means listening even when it's uncomfortable. It means staying open even when your ego wants to defend itself. It means responding instead of reacting. And most importantly, it means allowing yourself to be seen, not as an image but as a human being. When you stop performing, you become real. And when you become real, you become magnetic. Think about the people who made you feel safest in your life. They probably weren't the most exciting or the most successful. They were the ones who made you feel understood, seen, accepted. That's not charisma, that's presence. Love is not something you convince someone to give you. It is something that emerges naturally when two people are emotionally present with each other. And presence cannot exist where insecurity dominates. Insecurity says, I hope I'm enough. Love says, I am here. That difference is subtle, but it changes everything. The more you practice being loving without expectation, without keeping score, the less desperate you feel for love to arrive. And ironically, that's when love begins to show up. Not as fireworks, but as warmth. Not as obsession, but as peace. Because love is not about being chosen. It is about choosing to show up fully. And when you do, you don't have to beg for love. Love recognizes itself. There is another reason. Love keeps repeating the same painful pattern, and it's one most people avoid looking at. You are not just meeting the person in front of you. You are bringing every unresolved wound from your past into the room with you. And those wounds don't stay quiet. They speak through your reactions, your fears, your defenses. You think you're responding to what's happening now. But most of the time, you're reliving what already happened before. Old pain has a memory. When you were once ignored, you become hyper alert to distance. When you were once betrayed, you look for signs of danger everywhere. When you were once abandoned, you brace yourself for loss before it even arrives. So even when love shows up gently, your body doesn't relax. It prepares for impact. And here's the hardest truth. The person you're with is often punished for a crime they never committed. They forget to call, and suddenly it's not about the call. It's about every time you felt unimportant. They need space. And suddenly it's not about space. It's about every time someone walked away and didn't come back. This is how the past hijacks the present. Unhealed pain doesn't ask permission. It reacts. It assumes. It protects itself by expecting the worst. And protection, when driven by fear, looks a lot like sabotage. You withdraw before they can. You accuse before they can hurt you. You leave before they can abandon you. And then you say, see, love never works. But love never had a fair chance. No new heart can heal an old wound. That's not their responsibility. Healing is an inside job, and until you take responsibility for it, you will keep mistaking emotional familiarity for love, even if that familiarity hurts. This is why people often fall for the same type of person again and again. Not because that type is good for them, but because it feels known. The nervous system confused. Is familiarity with safety. Even chaos can feel comfortable if it's familiar. So you don't choose what's healthy, you choose what feels recognizable. And then you wonder why peace feels boring and drama feels alive. Healing changes that. Healing rewires what you're attracted to. When you finally sit with your pain, instead of running from it, something shifts. You stop craving intensity and start craving consistency. You stop confusing anxiety with passion. You stop calling emotional unavailability mystery. You start wanting truth, presence, calm. Healing doesn't mean you won't be triggered. It means you'll recognize the trigger before it controls you. It means you pause instead of react. You ask instead of accuse. You breathe instead of spiral. And that pause, that moment of awareness, is where love begins to grow safely. Love needs emotional honesty, not perfection, but honesty. The honesty to say, this reaction is old. The humility to admit this fear isn't about you. The courage to take responsibility for your inner world instead of projecting it outward. When you do this, love feels lighter, safer, more real. You stop demanding reassurance every moment. You stop testing people's loyalty. You stop reading danger where there is none. And in that space, intimacy finally has room to deepen. Love doesn't ask you to erase your past. It asks you to stop letting your past drive the future. So before you decide someone is wrong for you, ask yourself, am I seeing them clearly, or am I seeing through the lens of old pain? Because the moment you heal what hurt you, you stop bleeding on people who never cut you. Another quiet reason love keeps collapsing is because deep down, many people believe love is supposed to make life easy. They imagine love as a shelter from struggle, a soft place where effort disappears, where conflict fades, where everything finally feels smooth. And when love doesn't do that, when it introduces friction, discomfort, and challenge, they assume something is wrong. But love was never meant to be easy. Love was meant to be real. The idea that love should always feel light and effortless is one of the most damaging myths we carry. It causes people to leave too early, to quit when things get honest, to mistake normal human tension for failure, and in doing so, they walk away from depth while chasing comfort. Love doesn't remove difficulty, it reveals it. It brings your habits into the light, your communication patterns, your emotional blind spots, the parts of you that avoid responsibility, the parts of you that shut down when things get uncomfortable. Love doesn't hide these things, it magnifies them, not to punish you but to invite growth. That's why love feels hard sometimes. When two people come together, it's not just romance meeting romance, it's history meeting history, triggers meeting triggers, expectations meeting reality, and navigating that requires patience, humility, and effort. There is no intimacy without work. Ennio Ni, who tells you otherwise, has never stayed long enough to see love mature. Many people mistake excitement for love. Excitement is loud, it's fast, it's intoxicating, but it doesn't ask much of you. It doesn't challenge your ego. It doesn't demand emotional maturity. Love does. Love asks you to listen when you want to be right. Love asks you to stay present when you want to escape. Love asks you to communicate instead of withdraw. And that feels uncomfortable, especially if you were never taught how to do those things. So when the honeymoon phase fades, when the adrenaline settles, when reality shows up with its imperfections, people panic. They say it shouldn't be this hard. But that's not the truth. The truth is it shouldn't be this avoidant. There is a difference between a relationship that is unhealthy and one that is asking you to grow. Many people don't know how to tell the difference because they confuse discomfort with danger. They run at the first sign of emotional work, not realizing that depth only comes after ease ends. Love isn't tested when everything feels good. It's tested when patience is required. Anyone can love you when it's convenient, when you're happy, when life is flowing. But real love shows itself when stress enters the room, when misunderstandings happen, when both people have to choose effort over ego. And effort is not a sign that love is failing. It's a sign that love is alive. Love that never challenges you, keeps you small. Love that asks you. To grow feels uncomfortable, but it expands you. It teaches you emotional responsibility. It teaches you how to repair instead of replace, how to stay connected even when things aren't perfect. If you leave every time love feels heavy, you will only experience beginnings. You will never experience depth, because depth requires staying long enough to work through discomfort instead of running from it. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or harm. That's not love. That's fear. But healthy love still requires effort. Honest conversations, difficult moments, the willingness to face yourself through another human being's eyes. Love is not constant pleasure. It is constant presence. It's two people learning how to sit in the same storm without turning on each other. It's choosing understanding over winning. It's remembering that the goal is connection, not control. When you accept that love will challenge you, something shifts. You stop expecting perfection. You stop romanticizing ease. You stop quitting at the first sign of friction. And in that acceptance, love deepens. It slows down. It becomes steadier, more grounded, more real. Love doesn't promise comfort. It promises growth. And growth at times feels uncomfortable. But it's the discomfort that teaches you how to love beyond fantasy, into truth. Another reason love never fully arrives is because many people fear being alone more than they fear being untrue to themselves. So they stay, they adjust, they compromise in place as that slowly erase who they are. Not because they don't know it's happening, but because loneliness feels more frightening than self-betrayal, so they choose company over honesty. At first it feels harmless. You laugh a little less, you speak a little softer, you avoid certain topics to keep the peace. You tell yourself it's maturity, you tell yourself it's love. But over time, the cost becomes clear. You begin to feel unseen, even though someone is right there. You feel lonely inside a relationship. And that loneliness cuts deeper than being alone ever could. Love cannot live where truth is silenced. When you abandon your voice, your needs don't disappear. They turn into resentment, they turn into distance. They turn into quiet anger that leaks out sideways through sarcasm, withdrawal, or emotional shutdown. And then one day, you look at the person next to you and wonder why love feels heavy. It's because you left yourself behind. Many people stay in relationships that don't honor them because they're afraid of the emptiness that might follow. They fear the quiet, the nights alone, the question, what if no one else comes? But staying in something that diminishes you doesn't protect you from pain. It just spreads the pain over time. Loneliness passes, living a lie corrodes. Love only meets you at the height of your truth, never below it. The more you shrink, the less room love has to breathe. Because love is not attracted to masks, it's drawn to authenticity, and authenticity requires courage. The courage to say what you feel, the courage to walk away when something isn't aligned, the courage to trust that your truth is more valuable than temporary comfort. Being alone is not failure. Staying where you are unseen is. When you choose yourself, you're not rejecting love. You're making space for real love. The kind that doesn't require you to disappear to be accepted. The kind that doesn't punish honesty. The kind that doesn't make you earn safety. Love that demands self-abandonment is not love. It is fear dressed as loyalty. The irony is, when you stop being afraid to be alone, you stop settling. And when you stop settling, the quality of love that enters your life changes completely. You no longer accept half presence. You no longer tolerate inconsistency. You no longer silence your intuition just to keep someone close. You begin to trust yourself, and trust is attractive. Confidence rooted in self-respect is magnetic. People feel it when you're grounded in your truth. They sense when you're no longer negotiating your worth. And those who are incapable of meeting you there will naturally fall awa. Not as a loss, but as a release. Aloneness, when chosen consciously, becomes a sanctuary, a place where you reconnect with your voice, your desires, your boundaries. You remember who you are when no one is watching. And from that place, love doesn't feel like rescue. It feels like resonance. The fear of being alone keeps you stuck in relationships that slowly drain you. But the willingness to stand alone, if needed, opens the door to relationships that actually nourish you. So ask yourself honestly, are you staying because it's right, or because you're afraid of the silence that might follow? Because the moment you stop betraying yourself for the sake of company, love no longer asks you to disappear. Another truth many people overlook is this: you can only love someone else as deeply as you love yourself. Not in words, not in affirmations, but in action, in boundaries, in how you treat your own heart when no one is watching. Most people say they love themselves, but their lives tell a different story. They overextend and call it kindness. They tolerate disrespect and call it patience. They ignore their own needs and call it sacrifice. And then they wonder why love feels uneven, why they give more than they receive, why they feel unseen. The relationship you avoid having with yourself is the one you repeat with others. If you abandon yourself, others will too. Not because they are cruel, but because you taught them how. Love is a mirror. It reflects the standards you set for yourself. When you don't listen to your own boundaries, you can't expect someone else to respect them. Self-love is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's knowing when to rest and when to push. It's knowing when to speak and when to walk away. It's honoring your limits without guilt. It's choosing your mental and emotional health even when it disappoints someone else. When you don't love yourself well, you look to relationships for permission to feel worthy. You wait for texts to feel valued. You wait for attention to feel important. And that creates imbalance. Because love can't flow freely where worth is outsourced. A person who truly loves themselves doesn't chase love, they attract it. Not through ego, but through stability. They don't demand constant reassurance because they already feel secure. They don't tolerate mistreatment because they respect their own boundaries. They don't lose themselves in love because they know who they are. And that changes everything. Self-love teaches you how you want to be loved. It sets the standard. It defines what's acceptable and what isn't. Without it, love becomes confusing. With it, love becomes clear. Think about how you speak to yourself in difficult moments. Are you kind or cruel? Do you offer understanding or judgment? Because that inner voice becomes the blueprint for your relationships. You teach others how to love you by how you love yourself. When self-love is missing, relationships feel like survival. When self-love is present, our relationships feel like choice. You stop tolerating inconsistency. You stop chasing emotionally unavailable people. You stop overgiving to prove your worth. You no longer accept breadcrumbs because you've learned to feed yourself. And here's the truth. Self-love doesn't make you less loving. It makes you more. Because when you are full, you can give without resentment. When you are secure, you can love without fear. When you are grounded, you can connect without losing yourself. Love rooted in self-respect is calm. It's steady. It doesn't beg or chase. And when two people who respect themselves come together, love becomes a partnership, not a power struggle. So before you ask why love keeps failing you, look at the relationship you have with yourself. Are you kind to your own heart? Do you honor your own needs? Do you protect your own peace? Because love doesn't start with another person. It starts with how you treat yourself. Another reason love keeps slipping away is because many people chase chemistry instead of consciousness. They confuse excitement with depth, butterflies with truth, intensity with intimacy. And while chemistry is powerful, it is not sustainable on its own. It lights the fire, but it cannot keep it burning. Chemistry speaks to the body, consciousness speaks to the soul. Chemistry is fast, it's electric, it pulls you in before you even understand why. It feels like destiny, like something uncontrollable, and that's why it's so seductive. It doesn't require patience. It doesn't ask questions, it just happens. But what happens quickly can disappear just as fast. Conscious love moves differently, it doesn't rush, it observes, it listens, it chooses. When you chase chemistry alone, you often mistake anxiety for passion. Your heart races not because you feel safe, but because you feel uncertain. You don't know where you stand, you don't know what comes next. And that unpredictability creates intensity. The nervous system lights up. The mind becomes obsessed. And you call it love. But obsession is not love. It's hunger. Chemistry without consciousness burns hot and burns out. It thrives on highs and lows, on push and pull, on drama disguised as romance, and over time it leaves you exhausted, confused, emotionally depleted. That's why relationships built only on chemistry often feel incredible at first and unbearable later. Conscious love is quieter, and because it's quieter, many people overlook it. It doesn't overwhelm you. It grounds you. It doesn't make you question your worth. It makes you feel seen. It doesn't keep you guessing. It communicates. At first, it might even feel unfamiliar, maybe even boring, not because it lacks depth, but because your nervous system is used to chaos. When peace shows up, it doesn't know how to respond. So you say, there's no spark. What you really mean is, there's no anxiety. Conscious love doesn't entertain your wounds. It doesn't trigger your insecurities on repeat. It invites you into presence, into safety, into growth. And growth doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with silence, with understanding, with consistency. And consistency is not exciting to an unhealed heart. It's threatening, because consistency asks you to slow down, to feel, to stop running from yourself. And many people aren't ready for that. So they go back to what feels intense, what feels familiar, what feels like something they've known before, even if it hurt them. Conscious love requires awareness. Awareness of your patterns, your triggers, your tendencies. It asks you to notice just how someone makes you feel in the moment, but how you feel with yourself when you're with them. Do you feel calm or anxious? Do you feel grounded or unstable? Do you feel free to be yourself or constantly on edge? These questions matter more than sparks. Chemistry can pull two people together, but consciousness is what keeps them there. It's what allows love to mature, to deepen, to become something that doesn't just excite you, but sustains you. Conscious love is two people choosing each other daily, not because of obsession, but because of alignment, because their values meet, their intentions match, their growth moves in the same direction. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real. And real love doesn't leave you drained. It leaves you nourished. When you stop chasing chemistry alone, your standards change. You stop asking, how strongly do I feel? And start asking, how clearly do I see? You stop confusing emotional highs with connection. You stop romanticizing instability. And in that shift, love begins to feel different, safer, deeper, more honest. Because love that lasts is not built on sparks alone. It's built on awareness. Another reason love never truly settles is because many people believe love is something you find, not something you practice. They wait for it like a miracle, like luck, like a moment that will suddenly make everything make sense. And when that moment fades, as moments always do, they assume love has disappeared. But love was never a moment. It was always a discipline. Love is not sustained by chance. It's sustained by intention. At the beginning, everything feels effortless. Attention flows naturally. Curiosity is high. Patience is abundant. You don't have to remind yourself to listen. You don't have to try to be present. But that phase is not love. It's introduction. It's the doorway, not the home. Real love begins after novelty fades. This is where many people get lost. They mistake the end of excitement for the end of love. They don't realize that love doesn't disappear. It asks to be cultivated, like a garden. If you don't tend to it, weeds grow, not because the soil is bad, but because neglect always has consequences. Love requires maintenance, attention, care, effort, not dramatic effort, not constant intensity, but consistent presence, listening even when you're tired, choosing kindness and you're irritated, repairing instead of retreating after conflict. These things don't make headlines, they don't feel cinematic, but they are what love is made of. Many people keep restarting love because restarting is easier than maintaining. Beginnings are intoxicating. Maintenance is humbling. Maintenance forces you to confront your impatience, your ego, your avoidance, and instead of growing, people leave, convinced something better is waiting. But love doesn't deepen through replacement, it deepens through commitment. Commitment doesn't mean staying no matter what. It means showing up consciously. It means understanding that love is a verb, not a feeling. Feelings come and go. Love stays because it's practiced. Every relationship will have seasons, some full of warmth, some quiet, some uncomfortable. If you expect constant passion, you will miss steady intimacy. If you expect perfection, you will miss humanity. Love is built in the ordinary moments, the conversations after long days, the small check-ins, the willingness to keep learning each other, not just at the beginning but years later, because people change and love must learn how to change with them. If you don't grow love, it doesn't stay still, it withers. That doesn't mean love failed, it means it wasn't intended to. When you understand this, you stop blaming people for not being the one. You start asking better questions. Are we willing to practice love together? Are we willing to grow? Are we willing to stay present when things aren't exciting? Love that lasts is not fueled by luck. It's fueled by care. And when two people understand that, love stops feeling fragile. It stops feeling like something that could disappear overnight. It becomes something you build day by day, choice by choice. Love is not found. It is cultivated. And only those willing to tend to it get to experience its depth. The final truth is this: love arrives when you stop needing it to save you. When love is no longer your escape plan. When it's no longer the answer to your pain, your loneliness, your sense of incompleteness. That's when love finally shows up, not to rescue you, but to walk beside you. Most people approach love like a lifeboat. If this works, I'll be okay. If I'm loved, I'll be whole. If someone stays, I'll finally feel safe. That's not love, that's survival, and survival energy repels intimacy. When you need love to save you, you put impossible pressure on it. You expect it to heal wounds it didn't create. You expect it to fill silence you refuse to face. You expect another person to give you purpose, stability, and identity. And no matter how loving they are, they will eventually fail because they're human. Love cannot carry the weight of your salvation. The moment you stop needing love to rescue you, you start relating differently. You're no longer scanning for reassurance. You're no longer panicking at distance. You're no longer afraid that love leaving will destroy you, and that our stability changes the entire dynamic. You choose instead of cling, you share instead of demand, you offer instead of bargain. Love becomes an addition, not a solution. This is where love becomes sacred. Two people grounded in themselves meet not out of fear but out of fullness. They don't need each other to survive. They want each other to share life, to grow together, to witness each other's becoming. That kind of love is calm, it's steady, it's powerful in its quietness. There's no desperation in it, no urgency to lock things down, no fear-driven attachment, just presence, choice, respect. And paradoxically, that's the kind of love that lasts. Because when love is not your lifeline, it is free. And freedom is what allows love to deepen without pressure, without fear, without performance. You stop asking, will you stay, and start saying, I'm here. That shift is everything. Love doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. It doesn't need to hurt to be real. It doesn't need to consume you to matter. True love integrates into your life. It doesn't replace it. When love is no longer your savior, it becomes your companion, not something you cling to, but something you walk with side by side. Two whole people choosing each other not because they are afraid of being alone, but because together life feels more expansive. And here is the final truth. Love comes when you are already okay without it, when you've made peace with yourself, when you've stopped running from silence. See, when you no longer ask love to complete you, that's when love recognizes you. Because love doesn't respond to need, it responds to wholeness. And when it arrives from that place, it doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like home. That is the love worth waiting for. Love is not something you beg the world for. It is something you prepare your soul to receive when you place your faith first, before fear, before loneliness, before the need to be chosen. You stop chasing love and you start becoming it. Trust this truth. What is meant for you will never require you to abandon yourself. What is guided by faith will never arrive through force. And what is real will meet you when your heart is honest, not desperate. So walk with patience, stand in truth, serve with love, grow with discipline, and let faith do what it always does best. Align what you are ready for with what you are meant to receive. Because love isn't late, life isn't unfair, and you are not forgotten. You're just being prepared. Move forward in faith. Love will follow. Love is not something you chase through noise. It is something that finds you in stillness. And stillness only comes when faith leads your life. So many people are exhausted, not because love failed them, but because they tried to reach love without grounding themselves first. They tried to build connection without foundation. They tried to receive what they had not yet become ready to hold. Faith changes that. Faith teaches you patience in a world addicted to speed. Faith teaches you trust in a world driven by fear. Faith teaches you alignment before arrival. When you put faith first, you stop begging life for outcomes. You stop forcing timing. You stop measuring your worth by who stays and who leaves. You begin to understand that what is truly meant for you will never require panic, pressure, or self-betrayal. Faith slows you down, not to punish you, but to prepare you. It reminds you that delay is not denial, that silence is not abandonment, that solitude is not rejection. Sometimes God removes people not because you were unlovable, but because you were becoming stronger than what you settled for. Sometimes love doesn't arrive because your heart is still learning how to stand on its own without leaning on another soul for balance. And that season, that quiet, uncomfortable, lonely season is not empty. It is sacred. It is the season where character is built, where discipline is formed, where wounds are healed instead of hidden, where faith replaces desperation. Love that arrives too early becomes a distraction. Love that arrives after faith becomes a blessing. When you put faith first, you stop asking, why hasn't it happened yet? And start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? Waiting with faith is not passive. It is active preparation. It's choosing truth when no one is watching. It's choosing integrity when shortcuts tempt you. It's choosing growth when comfort calls your name. Faith asks you to become someone who can sustain love, not just attract it. Anyone can fall in love. Few can remain grounded in it. Faith builds that grounding. It teaches you how to love without losing yourself, how to give without draining your soul, how to stay open without becoming naive, how to trust without surrendering your discernment. Faith doesn't make you weak, it makes you steady, and steadiness is rare. In a world that confuses intensity for meaning, faith teaches depth. In a world that glorifies consumption, faith teaches service. In a world obsessed with being chosen, faith teaches you to choose purpose first. When purpose leads, love follows, not as chaos, not as obsession, but as alignment. Aligned love doesn't de-rush you, it doesn't confuse you, it doesn't cost you your peace. It meets you where you are, whole, grounded, awake. Faith reminds you that love is not something you earn by suffering. It is something you receive when you are ready to steward it wisely, when you can hold another heart without trying to control it, when you can walk beside someone without asking them to carry your identity. That kind of love is not dramatic, it is durable. It doesn't come with fireworks, it comes with clarity. And clarity is a gift only faith can sharpen. So if love hasn't arrived yet, don't harden your heart, don't rush the process, don't assume something is wrong with you. The delay may be protecting you from what you once wanted but no longer need. God never withholds love to punish, He withholds it to align. He aligns your character, your timing, your discernment, your capacity, because love received too early becomes a lesson. Love received in faith becomes a legacy. Trust this. What is meant for you will arrive with peace, not anxiety. It will require courage, not self-erasure. It will deepen your faith, not replace it. You don't have to chase what is guided. You don't have to force what is faithful. You don't have to beg for what is aligned. Your job is not to run faster. Your job is to stand firmer. Stand in truth. Stand in discipline. Stand in gratitude. Stand in service, and let faith handle the timing. Because when you move with faith, life stops feeling random. Every delay becomes intentional. Every ending becomes instructional. Every quiet moment becomes a preparation for something greater than you could have planned yourself. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not unloved. You are becoming, and what you are becoming will meet what you are meant to receive. So move forward, not in fear, but in faith. Not in urgency, but in trust. Not searching for love, but living in truth. Love will find you there. And when it does, it won't feel like chaos. It will feel like home.